So let's get started and dive right in. I don't normally do a bio. I'm not going to introduce who you are. We'll have your LinkedIn. We're going to talk about a lot of different parts of your journey as an entrepreneur. What I'd like to start with is just if I was to ask you, what do you do? What's your business today? And by way of introduction, what would you say?
Thanks, Levi. I appreciate you taking the time. Basically, what we do is we have Impact Wealth. I own Impact Wealth. We consider ourselves we help people create, protect, and use wealth to design a better future for their family, their community, and their planet. So that's basically what we do at a high level. There's lots of detail behind that, but yeah, that's how we would introduce ourselves for sure.
So I want to dive more into your current business model and some of the things you're doing. But to understand the context, I'd like to take us back further and talk about where you get started. The question I normally ask is, when did you first self-identify as an entrepreneur? And if that's not when you started, I'd love to know where the difference is from when you started running a company to when you thought you were an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I have a bit of a unique journey. I find I would take you back, I guess, to the age of 10. My family, I'm from southern New Brunswick, outside St. George, near St. Andrews, and my family is a lobster fishing family, and we were one of the first to become involved in fish farming or aquaculture in Canada way back in the day. So I was 10 years old. We started with a rowboat and a bucket of fish feed and a handmade wooden pen, 2,500 rainbow trout. So I can remember, going out with my dad and feeding fish on weekends and evenings and even having Christmas dinner and going out after Christmas, after opening the gifts and Christmas dinner, going out and feeding the fish, attending that. So early on, I would say, there wasn't a distinct day that I saw myself as being an entrepreneur, but certainly as a young kid, 10, 11 years old, I could see what it meant to be an entrepreneur, working in a family business, the commitment that took, what that meant to be both an entrepreneur in business, but also coming home and what all that kind of business family dynamic meant for good, bad, and otherwise. So yeah, it was an early age for sure. I knew what entrepreneurship was all about for sure.
So at what point in your journey would you say you started to chart your own path? Like as part of the family business or was it after?
Yeah, no, certainly as part of the family business. I really enjoyed that business. I was on the water. I mean, as a kid, there's few jobs I would argue that would be any more fascinating than what I grew up in. Yeah, it was every day was, a new adventure, right? From, working with other people and just the environment and fish and just being around, your lunch breaks were, taking a pop can apart and putting it on a hook and catching mackerel and just it was just fascinating. I mean, it was just a lot of fun for sure. So I would say as I was getting involved in certainly high school and trying to prepare what I wanted to do beyond that, I decided to take business administration. And at that point, growing up in the business, I was kind of managing shifts and kind of being involved in more of the management side of things. But yeah, I think, early on, I could see being involved in that, and I could see the potential because not only were we growing a business, we were really growing an industry. So it was kind of the birth of an industry at that time. Back in, it was 85, I guess, when I was about 10 years old, and the industry was really just getting up and off the ground. So yeah, being part of that was exciting. It was a lot of fun. Everyone was helping each other, and it was certainly an exciting time to be a kid and to be involved in the birth of a new industry for sure.
So I have to imagine, because anything new, it's a bit disruptive. There's not really a benchmarking or like comparative models that you just follow. How did you reach out? Like, how collaborative was it? How did you reach out and find the people that help you, figure it all out?
Well, back in those days, I mean, growing up in a business like that, everyone was small farmers, right? It was, that's how they were attracting people to the industry. It was basically lobster fishing families who became involved in this. And people were coming in from Norway and Scotland and different parts around the world, and it was all quite new. And Canada was one of the leaders in that space, and we were all learning as we went. And it was a really fascinating time because we had, scientists, some of the leading scientists of the day around the world, involved with, local lobster fishermen who knew the bays and the areas and the inlets and coves, temperatures, and all of the challenges that you had to be aware of. So just combining, the science with local knowledge and people at all different levels of education for sure was really a lot of fun. And at that time, farmers were really helping each other. If you did something that didn't work, you'd pass that on, and vice versa. And if something did work, so competition, I know competition in business is something that pretty common, but I just remember as a kid, and I'm sure it's probably naive a little bit at the time, being a kid growing up in it, but I spoke to people, of course, over the years about that. And it was a really collaborative time. I mean, people were, technically, I guess, competitors in some ways, but in many ways we were all just learning and wanting to find the right solutions to help others work. But people would chip in and help each other. And I remember at the time, oftentimes just doing it as a favor, so it was a lot of fun, different. It was a different style of business for sure back in those days.
It's funny. My history is, 7-generation dairy farming family, and it's funny how much the similarities are when you talk about the independent family businesses and working together. And it's yeah. I guess I never really understood how close to my dairy farming experience aquaculture was, or at least was when it started for sure. So you're obviously not in aquaculture right now. So I'd love to hear when that transition happened. Like, when did you wake up? And because it sounded like you really enjoyed what you were doing and the business you were in. How did you become a wealth advisor? And I'm sure there's a couple chapters there as you skipped ahead.
Yeah. How much time do you have, right?
Yeah.
Basically what I guess I would say, and a friend of mine who she's from Ontario, she lives in BC now, but I met her in Nova Scotia. She's always kind of called me an environmental entrepreneur, I guess, from the time she's known me for probably 10 or 15 years now. And so I guess as a kid, I can remember being in industry meetings where people who were many years my senior and had lots more experience than I did would stand up in these industry meetings with all the senior people and government people, and they'd pound the desk and say, we have to compete with Chile. Chile was ramping up and we have to compete with Chile. And I can remember standing up. I'd say I was probably 19 at the time. And I remember standing up, and I look back on that. I suppose it probably wasn't my place, but I just wanted somebody to explain to me, like, how can we compete? And it was all based on volume. We need to ramp up volume. And I just couldn't quite understand how New Brunswick, being a coastline, tiny, could compete with Chile with a coastline, many times our size. So to me, it always made sense to do less, higher quality. We're on the doorstep of the wealthiest market in the world, with New York and Boston and those areas, and Chicago and Toronto. So it just the philosophy of how the industry developed, I guess, would be, the way to put it. I never really agreed with the decisions that were made back in the 90s on volume, and that created a lot of problems in the industry that still, exist today. So I guess what I would say, I went to Dalhousie, did my undergrad business degree at Dal in Halifax, and finished my business degree at UNB. Did a couple of years at each. Really took over the running of the family business at the ripe old age of 21. We grew the business to $15 million a year and had 75 employees in 3 provinces. So kind of a larger, small business, I guess you could say. But I was never really happy with how the industry is developing, and I tried to make changes within the industry for many, many years. And I just got to the point, I was turning 35 that year, and I remember saying to my wife, I'm tired of fighting with government. I'm tired of, being only as good as our closest neighbor, just the way the industry was developed, lots of challenges. So I either have to find a different model that I can believe in to, invest my time and energy in, or I have to do something different. So I spent a year trying to find the right partner. I had 10 different companies around the world that were interested in doing what we were doing and partnering with us. And I chose a company out of Scotland called Loch Duart, and they were known for their environmental practices. They were recognized by Greenpeace in the UK. They had operations in Africa and the UK, and what we were doing in Eastern Canada was quite innovative at the time. And so we partnered with them. That was a 3-year journey. It was a lot of fun, but a lot of challenges, and it was primarily based in both PEI and in Nova Scotia. The business model was very strong, but unfortunately, again, politics being what it was, the NDP government, it was an election year, so they decided to put a halt on all development at the time. And our development model was arguably the most progressive in the world, with low stocking densities and fallowing, various things like that, distance between farms. But so I was 35, turning, I did that for 3 years, 38. The Liberal government was coming in, had lots of contacts with the new government, but I just felt like I'd seen that movie many times before. So I just felt like if there was a time to make a change, I was 38, now's the time to do it. So my wealth advisor was the one that actually encouraged me to take a look at helping other entrepreneurs. So that's a kind of a long-winded answer of saying that's how I pivoted, I guess you could say. So I decided to divest from my interest in aquaculture, which was a tough decision, being involved in that business since the age of 10. Not easy, but I felt it was the right decision. And looking back, it was at the time. Yeah.
And I gotta say, you say I divested of is a really short version of a much longer story, I'm sure. So I'm interested, and I'd like to get more into like the business of what you're doing now. But I'm interested in the rebirth and the complete change from you, where you have a certain amount of mastery, like a space you really know well, to an area where I have to assume you were an amateur again, and then to also be in the going to open a business in there. I'd love to navigate or learn a little bit about what were the big learning curves, what were the surprises, or I have to assume there was a certain amount of imposter syndrome and challenges in that early days. How was that when you completely changed careers?
I mean, my wife kind of looks back at it. She's always been very supportive. She's a teacher, and so I think that's probably why she has tons of patience. So glad she has lots of patience with me as well. But it was a learning curve. I always been kind of always have to do things my way, I guess, as the saying goes. And it was like drinking from a fire hose. I mean, it was just, it was a lot of information for sure to take in, but it was interesting because I knew that I didn't want to do the normal model. The normal model is, you pivot, you go talk to a bank or, investors group or one of those places, and you become an advisor, and you kind of work up the ranks and all that sort of thing. I had no interest in that, like zero. My interest was, I felt like I could connect with entrepreneurs because I've been one. So sitting across the table from an entrepreneur, I really wanted total flexibility to be able to give open and honest, trustworthy advice from a position of personal experience of what it means to be an entrepreneur and being a family business and all the challenges that entails. And I didn't want a model where I have a quota to sell specific products or anything like that, really, at the end of the day. So, that was kind of my first decision that I made. Is it's really important that if I'm going to do this, I want to have a business, not just me, but have a business that I can grow and try to reach out and help primarily entrepreneurs. I mean, we work with families as well, but oftentimes most of our clients are either family businesses or entrepreneurs that are involved in various things. So that was really important, to be independent so that I can, find the right solutions and the right products that fit our particular client. So when I set up Impact Wealth, when I founded Impact Wealth in 2014, that was an important point, to be independent and not be, tied to any particular product or quota. So that was kind of how we started the firm back in the day, 2014. Say back in the day, it seems like a long time ago, but.
So when you start Impact Wealth, when you say it that way and you're founded and started, it kind of pictures that you have this team and an office, but was it just you? Did you?
Uh,
How did you get started? Like,
yeah,
what's it look
no.
like when you actually started? The nuts and bolts of it all.
Well, you have to be registered and licensed, so that was the first thing. So yeah, I had to get investment registered and insurance licensed. So lots of studying and I knew a fair bit about investing. I mean, I've invested and had a wealth advisor now for a number of years. So I knew business pretty well. I never professed to have all the answers, but I felt like I had a really solid background in experience. I mean, many people would always joke to me and say, I've earned my MBA through the School of Hard Knocks to go from 40 or 50 producers down to four, and navigate through all the challenges that entailed. So I had to get licensed. I had to get on multiple platforms, and I did have one staff member, I guess, early on, and then yeah, we just kind of grew up from there. One of the things that I did early on was I had an opportunity to purchase a block of business, and it was the Chambers plan, so the Chambers Commerce Group Insurance plan. So I purchased that back in 2014, and to be honest, I didn't feel that employee benefits. I mean, I always had employee benefits. We had 75 employees in 3 provinces, but I always tell the story to other entrepreneurs. I was one of you. So anytime I get frustrated, or we get frustrated as a team, of how come they don't do this, or how come they don't do that, or how come they don't respond, and I always put my hand up and say, I was that person. It was like I was dealing with lots of firefighting and head down dealing with things, and I had an accountant, and it was like they would deal with the employee benefits and go out and find the best value, and then I'll sign off on it, right? And so when we get frustrated with entrepreneurs and why they don't do what we think they should, I remind everyone on our team now that this is why they do that, because I was one of those people.
So I'm pretty sure that one of the root reasons why we're doing this industry is so that my team can have an understanding when they're frustrated with our clients, who are also all entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
So it is very
Yeah.
much like creating that empathy or understanding, and the variety of different reasons people do different things. So when you got started, one of the other interesting things that I'd love to explore is your choice as a business to do. And you mentioned you're an environmental entrepreneur. You've chosen to go down the route of B Corp certification. I'm from the background of my past business was a social enterprise. I think of this business as a social enterprise, although we haven't taken certification steps. I'd love to navigate where you decided to blend that into your, maybe introduce it a little bit for those who might not know, but at what point did you decide that was something you wanted to do, and how has that been?
Yeah, early on, I can remember, getting my registration and licensing on the insurance and the wealth side. I was always kind of drawn to that space. To me, it just makes sense. To me, it's an absolute common sense thing to do on multiple levels. So there's lots of different, we could spend an hour talking about this, but basically at a very high level, sustainable or responsible investing, there's impact investing. There's a variety of different terms that are used, but we'll call it, sustainable or responsible investing. So basically what it is it's kind of the traditional investing. Obviously you want to grow your investments, and depending on the risk level that you want to take on. So kind of traditional selection of investment securities is in there, but in addition to that, there's an ESG filter. So environmental, social, and governance factors. So environmental, social, and governance factors are a really big deal. We are living in a fascinating time, as we all know. We're doing Zoom. We would normally be meeting in person and being part of WMI as you are. This past year has been quite fascinating to see how businesses have gone from having their best year to some having their worst year, and everybody in between. So it's a fascinating time to be in business, to be an entrepreneur. And it's really interesting for me because when I started in 2014, I was drawn to ESG investing, so sustainable, responsible investing, because it just made sense to me, both from an investment standpoint, but also aligning my goals with my values on where I want my money invested, right? To me, that makes sense to address some of these social and environmental challenges that we're seeing, and we knew this was going to happen. But you look at the past year in particular, the environmental crisis that we're under, the pandemic that we're seeing, the social disruption with diversity and gender equality on boards. There's so many different levels and layers that have just immediately come to the forefront. I don't know if it's because everyone's behind a computer screen this past year and they're making, even more disruptive this past year, but it's fascinating to see it all kind of almost come to a head in the past 12 months. So I would say, I always use the Gretzky analogy of, don't go to where the puck is, go to where the puck's going. And I always felt that was an important place where if we are going to be working with investors and entrepreneurs, that's an important position to be in, because some people do want to know where their money's invested. They don't want to invest in things like, tobacco or oil or pornography or, various, stocks that they just don't want their money to be invested in. Other people, may not necessarily care where their money's invested, but as your advisor, it's important that we're managing those environmental, social, and governance risks. So both sides of the coin, it's really important, and it's a fascinating time to see the growth in the space as well. So it's really interesting to see. So that's always been woven into the fabric of when we started the firm. I can say that we've been a member of the Responsible Investment Association since 2014, when we founded the business, and we're one of the first in Atlantic Canada that's in the space. So
I'd like to change. I agree with all of it. I love what I really enjoy is when people make better decisions, but then also get further ahead at the same time and find that win-win, and then that's going to convince everybody to get on board for sure. So a bit of a different tact. I would love, as blunt as you want to be, what is it like trying to convince entrepreneurs who feel like retirement planning is putting more money in their business to think about wealth management? So I've worked with, I talk with a lot, and I'm always surprised at how many aren't thinking about wealth management when they're throwing all their money and signing all kinds of loans from banks. And they're, I'm just interested in how you've been able to navigate that conversation. And also, I'm hoping that other entrepreneurs will be listening to this. So think of, what would you say to those folks about trying to think about it in a risk mitigation when they're a risk-filled world?
That's the irony, isn't it? And you get it. It's so funny to see entrepreneurs. They are so oftentimes risk averse when it comes to investing. The spinning wheel of doom. You're still there?
You're back.
Yeah. You kind of paused too, so maybe I did as well. I was just going to say the irony is, entrepreneurs are oftentimes so risk averse on their own investing and not wanting to take money out, but yet on their business, they don't realize how much risk they're taking on. So the simple, oftentimes what I say to people, that was really good advice that was given to me way back when, is I always say to people, to entrepreneurs in particular, take a piece of paper, draw the line down the center of the page. There's your business on one side, your personal's on the other. The business is there to help serve your personal needs as well, you and your team and your community, various things that you want. So taking money out of the business responsibly, at the right time, taking it out as early as you can and as often as you can, is really, really important. And why it's important is because oftentimes many entrepreneurs have loans and they have personal guarantees on those loans. So the normal kind of life cycle I find with many entrepreneurs is they've got this new business idea, and they're just so happy they've gone out and they pitched it to all and the lenders, the ones that want to move forward. You're just so happy to sign. What am I signing? I just want the money, right? So just tell me where to sign, and away I go. They don't realize that there's personal guarantees involved. They don't know even oftentimes what that means. And I can give you the script at the banks, and I'm not knocking the banks; they're important. I know we had the CEO of RBC on here on Tuesday, so on the WMI call. But banks have their place, but banks will oftentimes put personal guarantees in place. The entrepreneurs oftentimes don't know what they really mean and the implications of that. So you put the loan in place, you've got a personal guarantee, and oftentimes it's like, you start investing with the bank. So your business loan's there, and then all of a sudden, oh yeah, I should set up my kids' RESP, and yeah, I should start setting a little bit of money aside for retirement. All these different things. And then the story that I often say, and I come from, aquaculture, which we talked about, right? So you and your spouse have started a gourmet coffee shop in your local town, and you've done such a fantastic job. You put all your savings in. You started this business, and you've had some great success. So much so that you've built the gourmet coffee market, so that you've attracted the attention of Starbucks, and they open across the street. So at no fault of your own, you didn't take any money out. You're paying yourself either nothing or very low wages because you're keeping, your staff paid and all of that. But lo and behold, you signed a personal guarantee, you dumped money in, you didn't get money out, no fault of your own. Now you got a major competitor, the gorillas across the street, and your business, is drastically impacted. So that personal guarantee might be really serious. You and your spouse and maybe even your kids are involved in that business now. So that's kind of a worst case scenario. And that's, our job as an advisor is to identify gaps that you may not be aware of, offer some solutions that you may not know exist, and we help future pace our clients. So building that trusted relationship is really important. That's one of the biggest hurdles that I find in this industry is not everyone, but the industry is really filled with a lot of people who are trying to sell products. And people have that kind of perception where someone's just trying to sell me something. And we try to break that down, because what we're trying to build is a 25-year relationship. And if we can do that, we can identify some gaps that you should be aware of and make sure that you're paying attention to those blind spots for the story that I just gave you. That can happen.
So a slight segue, especially in professional services, but in a lot of cases, let's assume everybody in professional services is always ethical and altruistic. For the case of this next discussion, let's just assume we're all saints. There's a certain amount of awkwardness of, even if, like, especially if you know that you can help somebody who is a friend or family member, you're like, I know what I do will help you so much. How have you navigated how you sell to those close connections, friends, this is a curiosity. I've always struggled with this. I see a lot of people struggling with this. I want to help you for all the reasons aside from my own revenue, but how do I navigate that without coming across as a greasy salesperson or feeling? So I'm wondering, I've always struck me in our past conversations that you probably have a really good line there, and I'm wondering if any of it's learned or just through trial and error. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, what's really interesting, I find, so 3 key things for us. We talk about our people, our practice, and our process. Those are kind of our 3 Ps: our people, our practice, and our process. So one of the things that we do as part of our process for the clients that we work with, we offer, and I don't think I covered this early on, and I think, you and I spoke about this, but we do holistic planning. So we do investing, we do insurance, life, disability, critical illness, those sorts of things, not home and auto, but life insurance, critical illness, disability insurance, those sorts of things. And we do employee benefits and planning. So that holistic planning with entrepreneurs primarily, okay? So one of the things that we do is our process, it's a fit process. So if you referred a friend or family member to us or someone in your network, I don't know if they're the right fit. They don't know if they're the right fit for us. So that first fit meeting, we call it a fit meeting. We talk about our people, practice, process, what we do, how we can help, use some examples, learn about what their needs are, what their experience has been with financial services, good, bad, otherwise. And then we leave that meeting. We oftentimes leave that meeting, put a couple of days in between. We want them to think about it. We want to think about it and talk about it with our team and see if it's a good fit. And if it's a mutual fit, then we move into the discovery phase, okay? So as part of that we do 10 core things as part of our process. And one of those 10 core things is value-added services. So one of the value-added services, we act as the sounding board for friends and family of our clients. So we offer a 1-hour complimentary, no obligation, no fee. If they're important to you, they're important to us. We offer a 1-hour sit down, either in person or Zoom, COVID restrictions, of course, front and center. The purpose of that is just, this is a confusing space. People oftentimes don't know what they don't know. Sometimes they're embarrassed to ask questions. And we try to break down those barriers in a very, personal way, and also take the pressure off. There's no obligation to become a client. We don't know if you're a good fit. And even in that fit meeting, it's nice because people like the idea of, okay, so they almost breathe a sigh of relief, because most advisors don't do that. Most advisors are trying to get you to, sign today. We want to get your investments moved over, or we want to sell you a big life insurance policy, right? So that it further supports our values of building relationships, not selling product. It's stewardship, not salesmanship.
And you just, I would comment from an external point of view that it's a long, very consistent, ethical stance that allows you to do that with authenticity, and that nobody else, not nobody, but you couldn't just use that playbook and succeed without a long train of essentially an ethical position. Right. So I think that's probably, you can't just be a salesperson and then change tactics to use your playbook and have it work. In fact, it might count against you. So make sure you give yourself those props for sure. I have a couple other questions on that, but I do want to, there's two questions I always like to ask. One, looking at and this could be from age 21 on, and all of the different things you've done as an entrepreneur, somebody who's charted their own path, made the big decisions, created the jobs, had impact. What has been the most exciting time or couple of times for you as an entrepreneur? Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I think doing the joint venture with a Scottish firm, it was an exciting time for me, because it was some of the darkest days, but also some of the best days. To be in a period of time where the industry had contracted from 40 or 50 producers down to 4, and having all of the challenges that were underway without, getting into all of the details. But it was a really, really, really difficult time. Lots of sleepless nights, to basically unwind a family business and then find a solution with a foreign company that resulted in, a win-win-win kind of across the board for everything was really exciting. Looking back on it, it was like threading the needle. And I had lots of people say to me, after the fact, that they were surprised that, we were able to kind of to do what we did. So that was probably one of the most exciting times. I spent a month in Scotland. I've traveled in the States a lot, and I've been to Norway a number of times. So, that period of time was certainly an exciting time. But I would also say, to say in this business, the past year or so has been an exciting time. It both has lots of challenges, and there's many dark days. There's no question about that. But there's a tremendous amount of opportunity in Atlantic Canada and in our industry, and with us as a practice. It's just really interesting to be part of the entrepreneur community in Atlantic Canada, because I think we've got some really great days ahead. So I'd use both of those kind of as bookends, I would say. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we have a bit of a roaring 20s coming up ahead for sure. I don't know when it's going to really get going, but I'm excited to see what happens.
I just hope it's not like most things in Atlantic Canada, where it happens in Europe and then 5 years later, so it might be our roaring 2028, right?
Yeah. Anyway. Yeah. So the complement to that question is, and you've already said it at least once, nobody has this all together. No business owner out there has got everything figured out. There's always skills gaps or mistakes or problems. And I love to ask a question just to explain and to showcase and take, the entrepreneur a bit off the pedestal. If I was to ask you to look back any of your business background, some of the mistakes that you just cringe thinking, I can't believe I did that. Anything come to mind?
Underestimating the influence, the undue influence of government in Atlantic Canada. Which, that's a whole separate segue into you'll have to have another session, Levi, on that. But I always say, I always kind of say that as I'm a really good living example of young couple, educated, went to university, came back, started a family. I mean, these are the type of people that we should be supporting, right? And it was just everything but, right? And I'm sure that, many of the entrepreneurs that it's the same thing. So I'm really hopeful that kind of our generation and the generation of our kids coming behind us, we can change that, because that's what needs to change. That's the biggest issue in my mind in Atlantic Canada, is not supporting the entrepreneurial community like it should be. And quite honestly, in many cases, just the opposite, putting roadblocks up to support the status quo and creating industries and handing them over to companies. That has to stop if we're going to advance as a region.
So that's a big one.
That's a big one.
I'd love to hear if there's anything of like starting your business or operating that you're like mistakes that you think just any other entrepreneur could make. I often give the example, and I'll share. I don't think I've shared it before, but the example for me is I had a business degree, started a business, lean canvas, ran it for a trial for a summer, got my first physical location, and nobody had ever noticed in my cash flow, nobody noticed in my plan, told me in advance that commercial rent has HST. And so like I had been renting apartments for years, and like you don't pay rent, HST on rent. Not on my cash flow. It was an extra $500 that you probably get those taxes back as a small business, but I didn't have it in the bank account. Almost bankrupt in the first 3 months of business. And I love to share, like I now love to share that. It was a while before that felt really dumb. And now I'm like more people should share more of those mistakes that everybody makes that nobody talks about. So with that new lens, I'm wondering if anything comes to mind.
Yeah, I mean, there's tons of mistakes. Like I'm not sitting here to say that we've made all the right decisions. That's for sure. I guess my original answer was just underestimating government. And I guess certainly from my previous kind of aquaculture days, lots of mistakes on that, which kind of perpetuated a lot of the decisions that we made that created some big challenges, certainly. I mean, I've made lots of mistakes. I still make lots of mistakes. I think as an entrepreneur, you have to own up to the mistakes. And when you have a team, even if the team makes a mistake in the eyes of the client, you take the heat for it. And if we make a mistake, and I always say that, I actually met with someone this morning and said, we don't profess to be perfect, don't profess to have all the answers, but we'll go and get them and we'll do our best. And if we make a mistake, we'll make sure that we make it right. And we've done that, and that's certainly something that we stand by. So I mean, specific examples I can't I could come up with lots and lots of lists, but yeah.
So something that I've actually had two similar questions coming in from the team watching and it's around like you're talking about longer term relationships, and you're talking about values, and you're talking about helping those entrepreneurs. It's actually very well aligned with what we're trying to do. And we're all about longer term relationships versus like fix and leave. And we're very much about values. So the questions coming in aren't surprise to me, but I want to give you a bit of context on how aligned we are in those worlds. So two different questions, very similar answer. I'll summarize by saying, how do you maintain those relationships? But also, have you ever had any relationships that didn't feel right, or they eventually didn't feel right, and you've had to break up or consider not working with those people because of who you want your company to be? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, the actions you've had to take, or whether you did or not.
Yeah, no, for sure. We to tie that into your previous question, it's a work in progress, right? I mean, it's never, you don't wake up one day and it's like, okay, we've got this perfect business and everything we've been working for. It's like, bam, this is just working perfect. It's a journey for sure. We have engaged a consultant that we work with in BC. So we've been working with them for, I guess it'll be almost a year now. So really digging into the nuts and bolts of our process and how we onboard clients and who's a good fit and what our ideal client is. Um, we have we have done a lot of work over the past year in particular on who is our ideal client, who is a good fit, how do we identify those people and make sure that we're giving them what they need and vice versa. The challenge is in this particular business is you don't want your the difference is between I'll just kind of give you the answer on there's the loyalty ladder is what we call it basically. There's the um, prospect, customer, so someone that's buying a product from us. There's a client, someone who's buying multiple products or works with us on multiple different levels that we offer. And the ultimate is an advocate. So someone who waves our flag because they feel like they're doing a friend or family member a disservice by not introducing them to us. So the goal is not to have, more or many customers. The goal is we build advocates who introduce us to other people who are a good fit like them. So the challenge is offering a service business, and I'm assuming it's the same thing with you, that you don't want your customers who oftentimes, may buy one product from you and may have lots of questions, and they may be really low value customers from a product point of view, consuming a lot of time and resources when we're not spending the time and resources on those big clients that are perfect. We do all kinds of work with them. We're engaged with their accountant. We do lots of different things. So the challenge is, there's only so many hours in the run of a day, and we need to make sure that we're aligning ourselves with the people who value our time as much as we value theirs. So we have had to, extract ourselves from some relationships where we've just simply said, we've explained this 3 different times, we give you this service, like this is the best we can do, like it's the chronic. And thankfully we haven't had many of those. They're very few and far between, which is great. But we need to, certainly align ourselves with the clients who are the best fit and really value what we do.
So, we are striving to be an organization that helps businesses with better process, better systems, better tools to help their business, get out of the weeds. And I've heard you use a lot of words around your process and your, the 10 core things. And it sounds like you have a lot of thought and structure into the way you guys operate. I would love to understand how that evolved and got to where it is now. Like you mentioned, you bought a book of business and you had an advisor or a mentor as you started, and you did the education, but I have to assume you didn't start out with all of these systems and understandings of who you want to be and how you operate. I'd love to, even if you can talk about specifics of the systems or the tools, because it sounds like you really, even the way you explain things to me using that terminology is something I find a lot of entrepreneurs miss. So, they're always just kind of figuring it out as we go. How have you built the system?
Right. Well, one of the big things that we've done, like I said, over the last year or so, is work with the consultant that we're working with in BC that specializes, in the wealth management industry in firms like ours, kind of those smaller independent firms. So one of the things I'll just, I brought this along. This is kind of a kit folder that we've done. So it's a Impact Wealth kit folder that we do. So how things have evolved is we've had lots of customers. We've done group benefits, and then we have insurance customers, and we have wealth customers, and there's some planning needs there. So to me, what I've seen as an evolution of all of that is we need to spend more time with the people who value our services and put all of those pieces together. So our process is designed to put all the pieces of your financial puzzle together. So we act as your personal CFO or central family office. So the clients who do that holistic work with us, it's a bit of a unique process because we take your investing, we take your insurance, we take your planning, and we take your group benefits, employee benefits. We put it all together and we engage with your accountant and make sure that we're on the same page. One of the meetings I had just recently, a lot of our entrepreneurs, get to the point where they're successful. They've got extra cash built up in the business. They have a holding company that gets set up. They need to set up an investment strategy, both personally and inside their holding company for their needs. So a lot of the things that we do is that holistic planning for those particular clients. But the 10 core, so we do over 100 different things. We walk people through this. We do over 100 different things, offer products and solutions in 10 core areas. Those 10 core areas are really outlined in our kit folder that we provide. So wealth management, investing, risk management, which is insurance needs, employee benefits, tax management, cash management, so liquidity, making sure that you've got access to cash when you need it, retirement planning, family legacy or estate planning, philanthropy, giving back to the community, business succession, which is a big hot topic, as you know. Business succession transition is really important, which ties back into your question of entrepreneurs putting all their eggs in their business basket, and that's their quote unquote retirement plan. And that's an important piece of your retirement plan, but it shouldn't be all, right? For the reasons that we outlined before.
So I'm curious, just one more double click on this, because figuring out the process and the things and the elements and the components is really hard. And you have that, you work with a consultant. Have you been able to find, like, how have you been able to make that more manageable under the hood? Is there specific software in your industry that helps with this, or are you using Excel, which is a lot of companies, like, they can have the description of the products, but what's the engine you've been able to do so that when you have a new team member you hire, how are they able to deliver the 10? And this is more of because I'm translating the way you explain your systems to the customer and then how you actually run them, I think, is a new and evolving thing for every business. Like, even butchers have to have a tech stack. So it's, I'm interested to see how that's evolved for you, like 2013 or 2014, 2015. How are you managing things, and if that's changed a lot? I have to assume it's changed a lot.
It has, for sure, and to me, that's one of the big hurdles that I find. The financial services industry in particular is archaic. Like, it's so far behind the times from a technology standpoint, and it's so highly regulated, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it can be really slow to change unless it has to. So it's been really interesting to see this past year. It used to be that we had to, effectively meet with people in person and get, wet signatures on various things. And now all of a sudden, because, business would literally dry up overnight, now all of a sudden, we've been talking about e-signatures and all of these, innovative platforms. And that happened within a 6-week period. We've been talking about these things for years, and then boom, magically it, suddenly appeared. And now we can do these things. So for us, that's one of the challenges is having software that really, to use the term, talks to different platforms. That's a big problem. I would say that would be one of the most inefficient parts of the practice that we have right now. So, we're a Chambers plan advisor. Being independent, we have, on the employee benefit side, we're a Chambers of Commerce group insurance plan advisor. We're the second largest in Atlantic Canada, largest in New Brunswick. It has its own platform, but yet we work with other carriers like Blue Cross, Manulife, Sun. They have their own platform. And the employee benefits platform don't talk to each other, and they don't integrate with the insurance platforms. We use Manulife and various other carriers that way. And then the investing side, there's 2 different platforms. There's a mutual fund platform, and then there's an insurance platform. They don't talk to each other. And then we have a CRM. So we've got that platform where we manage all of our client information, that sort of thing. And then we have financial planning software, and nothing really talks to each other.
I'm almost glad to see that, because you're so polished on your process and systems discussion, and it's like there's got to be garbage underneath somewhere.
Oh, no question. How much time do you have? No, absolutely. This is not a Swiss watch fine-tuned machine by any stretch, Levi. I think the biggest thing, though, is just is being honest and trustworthy and authentic with people, and you can get, like anything in life, right? Whether you're talking to a wealth advisor, investment advisor, or whoever you choose to work with, if you can build a relationship with someone that is built on trust and authenticity, we work together. It's a journey, right? And you work together and you find out, okay, what's the priority list here? What should we be working on first? And it's like, in in your former role, sausage making is not pretty behind the swinging doors, right? But it all tastes good out in the front. So same type of thing. There's a lot of challenges, behind the scenes. The systems are not, built, and even from a regulatory standpoint, they're not allowed to communicate with each other at this particular point in time, right? Like it's so disjointed. So we're constantly trying to, backfill all those things, because
just means there's that much more opportunity to improve.
yeah, yeah. If I had more time, I'd be into the software business trying to make this all work. But
that keeps coming up. It's like, no, I see how scarce coders are right now. It's like, no, not the time. So I have to assume, and it is an assumption, just because of our conversation and past conversations, is that you are somebody who likes learning and somebody who likes hearing other thought leaders and changing your perspective. I would love to hear what types of books or podcasts or mentors have really influenced you and changed your perspective that you would recommend to others. I love getting that referral that helps us find the gems, things that you really think that are really great pieces of knowledge or perspective.
Yeah, I've got a wide variety of books. I mean, right now I'm reading Obama's book that I had for Christmas. My wife gave me a stack. My girls gave me a stack of books for Christmas, from a war book to Obama. I just finished Nelson Mandela's book, the 600 and some pages. I've had it on the shelf for years, so I finished that a while ago. So yeah, I've got lots of. I try to read. I'm not an avid reader that I have to put in 2 hours a day or anything like that. But I do usually have a book on the go. But as far as a thought leader, so I could give you certainly lots of books. But as far as a thought leader, who I'm looking to right now is that I've admired is Mark Carney. So the former governor of the Bank of Canada, went to England, as you know. Is now appointed as the UN, I think, special advisor on the environment, and is in the middle of the conversation on ESG investing. So I've always admired Mark Carney for his vision of where the puck is going, and he's a Canadian boy from the north, plays net. I'm a goalie too. Maybe we can connect on that level. I don't know. Never met him. I'd like to someday, but I've always admired how his journey from small town to some of the highest offices globally of influence. And while he's polished for sure, he's a Canadian, and he really is someone who I admire his vision of where things are going and what society and the globe needs. So he's a big thinker, but he can also bring it down to the common level of what businesses need to do, what governments need to do, but also what business need to do.
Where would you suggest people start actually hearing some of his thoughts or learning? Like, where would his voice be easiest to be found?
Yeah, certainly. I do a lot of research on the web, just looking up a lot of his articles, his speeches. I try to listen to podcasts. He was on CBC, Nella Ayed, I believe, not long ago. He had a 2 or 3 part series. So I listened to that recently. I can get you those details. But yeah, he's someone, he's one of many, but he's someone I find that I'm drawn to. Most of my books are, our bookshelf would probably be the same. I've always been kind of drawn to food. I've got lots of food books, and but environmental interest reading is certainly something that I do, and certainly diversity, and it's the B Corp side, right? It's business, it's capitalism 2.0. I have a book I had for Christmas about what the pandemic is going to do and what the world's going to look like over the next 10 years. So I just, I'm really interested in really what we should be doing to help support where things are headed, what we need to do. So yeah, that's kind of what I'm most drawn to, I guess.
Is there anywhere that we didn't take this conversation that you'd love, or any final messages that you'd like to get across?
No, I don't think so. I guess I'd come back to my kind of core themes. I think it's a really exciting time to be an entrepreneur, especially in Atlantic Canada. There's so much potential, but there's also so many things that we should be aware of that I feel like many entrepreneurs have some blind spots that that they could get caught on. One thing, as you know, we were on the call a few days ago, but inflation. This is really unprecedented times. Yes, the economy is going to be opening up again. Vaccinations are rolling out, but the roaring 20s, I've heard that term before. And when you use terms like that, that sounds like paradise is around the corner and we've got smooth sailing. And I guess I'm of the view that plan for the best, plan for whatever the term is, I guess.
Prepare for the worst.
Let's hope for the best, plan for the worst. Exactly.
Yeah.
Hope for the best, plan for the worst. So I feel like there's a lot of entrepreneurs out there who, some have really struggled for sure over this past year in particular, and those people need to know what their risks are if they do go out of business or they continue to struggle when the government support stops or starts getting turned down. That's a big concern for sure. For other entrepreneurs, they've had their best year yet, and they expect that to continue. So I think working with someone like us, or someone that you can find that you can trust, to pop the hood, make sure that what's under the hood is what you think is there, and making sure that you're aware of some of those blind spots that you may not be thinking about. So
yeah, I think it's definitely the time for people to be having other people to talk to about, it's just so much change. Anything you knew 2 years ago, you want to make sure you vet or what you think you do. So I'm going to call this to a close. I really enjoyed the conversation. I hope you did as well. We are going to go back down to the floor. Some of my team's around. If you have a few more minutes, you can stick around and answer any follow-up questions. But I understand you're also a busy guy. So I'll close out for now, and I look forward to talking to you again soon.